Hey guys, Kevin here, and I've got a very sexy Game Boy Advance SP. The reason I'm saying it's sexy is because this was the original one that I bought many years ago. I think I got it quite close to release day. I passed it on to my brother and he recently gave it back to me, you know, to kind of check out and stuff like that. It's actually in pretty good condition. There's not, if you look at it, there's not too many marks on it. It's pretty mint. Now if you look at the label, you can see I've got the original version. I don't have the one that was released later. Now for those who don't know, the Advance was released in 2001. This was released 2 years later in 2003, and then 2 years later we got the Game Boy Micro. Now there is a good argument to suggest that this is the perfect Game Boy. Is it the perfect Game Boy? You know, if you think of the word perfect, then no. There's lots of things to love about this and there's lots of things to hate. But when I'm talking about the word perfect, I'm really talking about the fact that there was 3 Game Boy Advances and they all kind of had pros and cons. This kind of sits in the middle between the original Advance and the Game Boy Micro. And I think it's got a good balance between what it's got and what it's not got. So I'll just go through and kind of show you, for those who don't know it. You've got the power switch here at the side here. And now you can see here, that's the brightness going on and off, the front light. You've got the buttons there, the D-pad, select and start as normal, and you've got the volume at the side, the volume rocker. Now, the one thing I always hated about this was these. I mean, look how bad these buttons are, the little L and R buttons. I mean, they're not horrendous, but I mean, try play Street Fighter on this. It's not the best, and they're quite small and they're okay as far as, you know, when they do work. But if you look at the Game Boy Micro, I mean, this is smaller, but look at the buttons on this. They're so much more comfortable in the hand. They feel so much better. These things are just bizarre, really. On the bottom, you've got the cartridge slot, and at the top we have 2 extension ports there. One of them's for power and the other one is for extension cables. Now, if I've got the right one here. No, that's for the Micro. So this one powers it up. If I can get it. Right, so that one powers it up. The other one is used for a variety of things, you know, like different accessories and whatnot. But one of the things missing from this is a headphone jack, and you had to use a cable to actually connect your headphones. So the downside is that you can't just plug your headphones directly into the Game Boy SP. But I guess you could argue that you can still do it. So on the rare occasion that you do want to do it, you can just pick up a cheap cable and you can then play games on it. You can then listen to music on it. Right, so I think there's a lot of things to love about this and a lot of things to hate. Now, I pointed out the L and R buttons here, which some people might not be bothered about them, but I think they're really, really poor. Now, as far as playing games, this is one area where the Game Boy Advance excels because it plays Game Boy Advance games, as you saw. I've got Game Boy Advance. But, like the original Game Boy Advance, it also plays Game Boy games. So, I only have 2 at the moment. I've got more at my brother's. Let me get them off him. And you put them in, they kind of stick out like that. So it's kind of bizarre because the cartridge slot in a Game Boy Advance was at the top, so those games were at the top. But this will play Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, and to be honest with this, sitting at the bottom, it doesn't really get in the way of playing the game, so it's not too bad design as you would think. So kind of like the Game Boy Color, this will make original Game Boy games. I wouldn't say it makes them colour, it does add a little bit of colour to them, you know, just so that they're not the kind of the boring colours that it was originally, just the kind of shades of green. Now, 2 other things to really, I think, to note about this. One being the screen, the other being the battery. One of the things I never really liked about the original Advance was the fact that you had to use batteries with it, and for me that was always a downside. I think a lithium ion battery makes much more sense. You can charge it up The quote you're giving 10 hours of battery, that's the same as the micro, but you can get up to 18 hours if you turn the front light off. But when the front light's off, it's really, really poor. And just to illustrate that, what I'll do just now is I'll switch my lights off, and I'll give you an idea of how bad this is. Now imagine that you're playing in a lit room, you know, this is what it would be like in a lit room. You're playing in your living room, this is what you would get. You can't even see that, it's that bright. But it is there. So that's with the brightness off. Sorry, this is with the brightness off. This was with the brightness on. Now you can play it like this, but it's maybe not apparent, but when the light is off, it doesn't look the best. Should actually probably put a game in there to show you. Now, put game in here. Right, so what I'll do now is I'll switch off my light and we'll switch everything back on. See that there? So imagine you're sitting in the dark. We've got the Game Boy Micro and we've got the Game Boy SP. The one on the left here, that's the SP, and that's with the brightness on. So there's only two levels of brightness, on and off. The Game Boy Micro is perfect. Just looks like a modern, you know, like smartphone or whatever, you know, the brightness is superb. With this one, when you turn the front light off, you can't see anything. It's really poor, you know, it's just unplayable. But the idea is obviously that you can save energy during the day and then you turn on the light at night. Now, here's the thing though, as you know, the version is AGS 101 came out later on, and whilst you can pick up an SP for, I'll switch these off and out. You can pick up an SP really cheap. I mean, you can pick these up for like £20, $20. But if you get the one with the backlight, it's going to cost you probably 4 or 5 times that, depending on the condition of it. And a lot of people buy these up and then just to get the backlight so that they can use it in an original one and then change the shell. Now here's the thing, like everyone goes on about how this backlight is amazing, and there is absolutely no denying that when you put on both of these systems, you know, when the front light is on this one and when this one's just normal, the Game Boy Micro looks infinitely better than the Game Boy Advance SP, infinitely. But it's not unplayable. It's kind of weird, but it's maybe not coming through on the screen, but it kind of just makes the original screen a little bit maybe just dated. You know, it's a little bit, I don't know, actually in the camera this one looks better because you can't see the light here, but it's kind of the opposite in real life. And I don't know, I think some people are maybe making the backlight more than what it is. They're making it out to be this amazing thing, as if it changes how good a system is, and I don't think it is. I think the front light isn't as good as the backlight, but it's not stopping you from enjoying it. So, you know, if you're in a well-lit room, I think the off and the front light on setting is probably better than the 5 levels of brightness. It's probably acceptable, sorry. It's not as good as the 5 levels of brightness you get with the micro, but I think for what it is, it's okay. And, you know, it's not as bad as people made it out to be. That's the thing. When you read all these things online, they're making it out as if the lack of a backlight made this a terrible system, and it doesn't. Not in my eyes anyway. So, whilst I'm at it, I'll just have a little weighing session to see who's the fattest. So, now without a doubt, I think we know who's going to be the winner here. It's going to be the Micro, because that thing is super skinny. Right, 0. Here we go. Game Boy Micro. Right, I'll put a game in because obviously you're going to be playing a game with it. 88. We get the SP on. 157. I've got some other systems here just for comparison. PSP Go. Oh, that surprised me. That's lighter. It's weird, it doesn't feel like it's lighter. Wow, that's a gram lighter than the SP. Or 2 grams now. I'm kind of surprised by that, if I'm honest. I didn't expect that to be tiny bit lighter, practically the same if we're honest. And then we've got Nintendo DS, 3DS. That's a lot more heavier, especially when you compare it to, you know, the Micro. Compare it to the Micro, we're talking 3 times more. And the other thing that you know, people obviously compare the Micro and the SP and the Advance, and you know, its size. But you can see here the Micro is actually thicker, you know, broader. On the side, when we're talking about thickness, the Micro is going to win. But obviously height, you know, the Micro, this thing is just super small. So if that one's going to win on width, then, you know, from there to there it's tiny. But there are some benefits to using a clamshell design. One would be that you protect the screen. Now what they did with the Game Boy Micro is they used that kind of front plate thing, which I showed you in another video. But in this one you don't get that. You know, what you see is what you get. But there is a good thing about this. The Game Boy Micro, if you buy the Game Boy Micro now, you can change the front plate, but you can't really change anything else. You can't buy another shell. And half the ones that are out there in pretty good condition, and the other half are really, really badly scraped. The problem is you can't really fix that. There's no one really selling any parts. Because this was such a small device, it's such a small little handheld, you know, it's difficult to, you know, get the parts for it. I guess it could be done, but just no one seems to be selling them. In contrast, you can buy shells for the SP and for the Advance very, very cheaply. Like I'm talking like $5, $6. So for example, I could get something like with Mario or Pikachu or anything like that, and I could take out the parts and I could take out all the technical parts out of a really badly damaged SP and put them into a brand new shell, and it will look as if it's brand new. And in fact, a lot of the ones that are being sold on eBay are in fact being sold with shells. But as far as gameplay going, which, you know, arguably is the most important thing, I think it's good. I mean, it's certainly more comfortable in the hand than a Micro. But your hands are quite close together. You know, with a Micro, you're like this, and that is quite cramped. You know, with this one, your hands are a wee bit more like this. So I think from a gameplay point of view, you'd maybe put, I don't know, it really depends on your preference. I quite like looking up the way to the screen, but you know, with this one you kind of hold it like this. With this one you kind of bring your hands more down like this. It kind of works so in a way, but it's not as good. The original Advance, without a doubt, is easily the best one for playing games, but this one, it's hard to explain, but it's kind of like, because your hands are kind of sitting at the bottom here, it's not as bad as you would think. But it's really, it's like these L and R buttons I have more of a problem with, rather than the position of the D-pad here. It is telling though that most of the other handhelds that are designed now, they've got the, you know, the buttons and the D-pad spaced out much further. This was kind of like the original Game Boy, where everything was really, really close. It's fairly loud though. The battery life is still pretty good on this as well. It's so bizarre playing this. I streamed Grand Theft Auto 5 last night, and look at me now. Back to the classic. This is how it all started, folks. I really like the SP. I really do. I think, you know what, I was saying at the start, is this the perfect Game Boy? And I think there's a few reasons why I think it could be argued to be the best Game Boy. Now, when I'm talking about the best Game Boy, I'm talking about all the Game Boys. Game Boy Pocket, Game Boy Light, Colour, that kind of thing. And because of that, it kind of eliminates the Micro, because the Micro is amazing. I love this thing. But this doesn't play original Game Boy games. So you're losing a huge amount of games, you know, that you can't play from the catalogue, unless you get a flash card and play emulation. More on that soon. But the fact that this and the Advance can play original Game Boy games, I think, really puts in the argument that it is the perfect Game Boy. Now, you could argue that the Game Boy Advance is better, but one of the reasons I like about this, well, there's a few reasons. One is it's lighter, it's more portable, protects the screen, and it's got a lithium-ion battery instead of using, you know, like AA's. And for me, I think that's quite a big thing, the lithium-ion battery. I hate having to change batteries all the time, especially when you're out, and I love, you know, just taking a USB bank with me and then just keeping it powered. The thing is, you know, it's the way that Nintendo's consoles have been. It basically means that if you've got a 3DS, you can play all 3DS games and all 2DS games. And if you've got a Game Boy Advance or an SP, you can play all Game Boy Advance games and all Game Boy games and all Game Boy Color games as well. So between these two consoles, you can play every single handheld game Nintendo has ever released, and you can buy any Nintendo handheld cartridge you see in a shop or on eBay. And from a collector's point of view, that's really good, you know, because if you have to pick your battles and you have to pick which ones to buy, then I think there's a good argument for just picking, you know, a 3DS instead of a 2DS, because the 3DS is backwards compatible and can play 2DS games. And there's a good argument for picking either the Advance or the SP. I think the Advance is going to be a much more pleasurable handheld to play. You know, it's going to be better to play as far as, you know, the buttons are spaced out. You know, it's got a bigger, I don't know if the screen's bigger, but I think you know, just for holding it, it's going to be a more pleasurable experience. But I like the fact that the screen is protected in this clamshell design. I like the fact that, you know, it's got the lithium-ion battery, and I like the fact it's lighter. It's just more portable. But goddamn, these buttons are just not as good as they should be. Really, really poor. And I think it becomes more apparent now, you know, after playing with the Micro. These things feel brilliant. Feel really, really good. They're clicky, but, you know, they're kind of sensitive as well, and they feel great. These things are, it's like they stuck it on at the very end. They went, oh god, oh no, we need to put on some L and R buttons as well. Okay. That's what it feels like. It just feels like an afterthought almost, you know. Really, these buttons should have come right round, and I don't see why they couldn't have. It's just the way it's designed, I guess. But so yeah, I've got some more handhelds coming up for you guys. My brother actually found a lot of the handhelds that I had before. I gave them to my brother and just said, you know, you keep them. But he's found a lot of them. I think like the Game Boy Pocket, etc., and a few other systems. So I'll maybe do some videos of those in the future. And while we're at it, Darren, if you're watching this, you know, we swapped some games there. Some games he had in the house, some games I had. You can see I've got some different games listed here. Mario Kart, etc. Mario and Luigi. Look at this one. Road Rash, right? I'm like, oh great, I loved Road Rash as a kid. And then, if I can zoom in here, get this zoomed in. You can see that. You see that? Who the hell's Nintendo? Nintendo! So, yeah, I've got another fake. Unfortunately, so I'll have to put that into the Pokemon gang of being a fake game. I don't think this one's even working, so at least the Pokemon game was switching on. This one doesn't even seem to be doing that. It just shows you how, you know, I thought, well, actually it is switching on, so never mind, forget what I said there. I was actually under the assumption that the fake games weren't a big issue at the time, but, you know, I bought this when it was released, and so I'm surprised that this one is like that. Yeah, it definitely says Nintendo. No doubt about it. I don't know how this one is fake though, but the fact that most of the games that we've got are from Europe, and this one's USA. Yeah, well, this one's USA as well. But I was, you know, I did travel to the USA quite a lot of times around the time that came out, the SP. I might have even bought this in America. I'm not even sure actually. I'm not sure. But I was in America several times over, you know, the course of a few years around that time, so I could have picked up there, I'm not sure, so I can't even blame him. But still. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this look back at the SP. I do think this is a great little console. And, you know, as far as playing advanced games, I think I'd maybe still lean towards this, because it's more portable, the shoulder button's a little bit better, and the screen is really good. But I think there's a lot to be said about this. It's still very light, still very portable, but the fact it can play original Game Boy games as well, I think it makes it such a versatile system, you know, and that's something this one can't do. This one can play a host of games. It doesn't have the headphone jack, but I don't think that's a major issue if you can buy a cable, you know, because for me, I would always play the music in the house anyway. It would only really be when I was on a plane that I would need the cable, so it's not a major inconvenience. But I think for Game Boy Advance games, you know, I love this because it means I can just put it in my jeans and take them anywhere. This is really light as well, but I love the fact that this plays Game Boy games and Game Boy Color games as well. So it means if I see any games, you know, on sale, I can pick them up and I can play it using this. Ideally, you want to get both, but I realise that's not always an option. But thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Game Boy SP. It's been a little bit of a trip down memory lane for myself because this is the original system that I bought, and it's in pretty good condition. But you can pick these up really cheap. These are on sale all the time on eBay. You can get some good deals out there for the SP, and you get them much cheaper than the Micro, which is probably about 2 or 3 times more expensive than the SP. So that's another, you know, that's another reason why the SP should be considered, you know, the ultimate Game Boy, the perfect Game Boy, whatever, because, you know, it plays all the games, got a lithium-ion battery, protects the screens, lightweight, and it's cheap as hell. So that's why I think it's a pretty good Game Boy system, and arguably the best one to buy if you want to play all the Game Boy catalogue of games. So love to know what you think, guys. Let me know in the comment area below. Let me know, you know, which Game Boy Advance you like and how you feel as far as playing games on this, and whether you think it's a little bit too cramped or not. I think it's good, you know. I don't mind playing like this. I just hate these buttons. But as always, guys, thanks for watching.